Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicast and in partnership with Vertical Valor magazine. In this two-part series, Tony Weber and I host a conversation on the urgent need for mission-specific training for pilots and aircrews in public safety aviation. Join us as we discuss the critical gaps between factory training and the specialized skills required for various mission sets, such as aerial firefighting and hoist rescue operations. Our guests, who are all Hangar Z alumni, include SR3's Dave Callen and Rob Munday, and Riverside County Sheriff Aviation's Mike Calhoun. The conversation shares personal insights and experiences, emphasizing the importance of leveraging existing knowledge and resources to enhance training programs that ensure safety and efficiency in the field. We'll navigate the intricate world of helicopter training, covering everything from cost-effective solutions and OEM training to the challenges of securing approval for specialized instruction. As we explore the complexities of multi-mission agencies and special operations, we'll discuss the balance between utilizing autopilot systems and maintaining essential hand-flying skills, all while highlighting the significance of preparation and sound decision-making in high-pressure situations. This conversation is a call to action for professionals in the field to embrace continuous learning and collaboration. Whether you're a seasoned pilot or hoist operator or new to public safety aviation, you won't want to miss the invaluable insights shared in this episode. Thank you to our sponsors, BLR Aerospace, Precision Aviation Group, and Shotover.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, Jon Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Shanley.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Down by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
The reality is most of these missions we're talking about aren't taking place on a sunny day in Southern California at sea level when there's no variability there. All these things are taking place at high altitude, windy conditions, terrain, weather, all the things that surround that. So the limits are what we're talking about. We're not talking about your standard atmospheric conditions. So I think that is important to bring up. David, looked like you had to touch on before I go to the next question.
Yeah, one last thing on that. Even with the hand flying, to be honest, we spend the majority of our time in classes on that hand flying aspect. Because again, I'm like Tony. I hand fly unless I need the autopilot. 99% of the time I'm trying to hand fly because that's a perishable skill. Like Mike said, it's kind of a matter of personal pride too, to be able to do that accurately and safely. But, most of the pilot training we're providing, it has to do with specifically that, like showing folks how do you actually, there's a lot more to it than just hovering your helicopter. What do you look at? How do you use your reference point properly? How do you maintain control? How do you make safe approaches at altitude and high winds, at high gross weights, So there's a lot more to it than just, learning how to apply the use of an autopilot.
The bulk of our training, again, Dave can probably speak to this, but the bulk of the training that we deliver, and quite honestly, the standard when we walk into an agency and we say it day one in the classroom, we say, you guys have the capability to be precise, whether that's dropping water on a fire or whether that's hoisting someone to the roof of a truck, or I don't care what it is, AUF, you have the ability to hit a target from a certain position or whatever, I don't care. You guys have the ability to be precise, but your capability to achieve those goals happens pretty much exclusively outside of the capability of the systems. Like, you need to be competent, capable. You need to be probably hand flying the aircraft to go and do those types of things. Like Mike would never go and do a vertical surface cliff rescue using autopilot. It just wouldn't happen because his capability after some quality training would get him to the point where he can do that safely. And I think our entire class operates in that 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 range above the capabilities of an autopilot system. And yeah, to Dave's point, that's something that you need to keep in mind is that we're trying to teach you how to operate in that 1% bubble safely and effectively.
The next question I'm going to ask is, I'm sure, going to be divisive. Maybe not. Maybe it's not divisive. But I'll start with Tony, and then I'll go to Dave, and then I'll go to Mike. of all these special missions, we think of rescue operations, fast rope, aerial firefighting, airborne use of force. Those are the kind of four that I'll sit on. Of those four special missions, as a pilot, what do you think is the most challenging of those mission sets? And Tony, we'll start with you.
Well, since I do all of them, firefighting, hoist rescue, fast rope, long line, all of it, I'll be quite honest, the one out of the four is that I've gotten close to, a come to Jesus moment more than once is aerial firefighting. You got to remember you're flying 50 feet, at 50 knots in the smoke environment, and you're inside the wire environment. And I can't tell you how many times, and we call out wires religiously, how many times we have gotten close to wires and made a turn at the last minute. And I'm sure somebody's not going to want to hear this when this gets played. So edit that part out, please. And hoist rescue, we've had some things happen over the years. And fast rope, somebody going down too fast, maybe twist an ankle at the bottom. But the fire environment with everything going on with, 6 helicopters stacked behind you, bombers on one side. I'm not going to say going IFR in the smoke, but you're pretty close to it. I think that one right there out of all of them is probably the most dangerous if you are not doing it right.
And the intent is to do that at gross max. Like if you're not flying around at the aircraft's payload capability, someone's asking questions, why not? Like you're doing all of that stuff in the most challenging aircraft configuration possible, basically all the time, right?
Yeah. I mean, you are truly, when you're pulling water every time, we teach, basically one of our firefighting classes is power management. Some of these students that are pulling a bucket or a tank of water off the pond for the first time, and, let's say you're torque limited first and you're in the yellow every time you pull some water. I mean, there's a pucker factor going on there because these students are never asked to do that. I mean, they've gotten close to their power margins before, but now we're asking them to do it all day long, pulling a lot of weight. And that's just one of the few comfort level things that you're trying to teach them, and you're teaching them techniques on how to get off the water without over torquing or over temping the aircraft. So there is a lot going on there.
The amount of dedication and mental payload that you're putting forward into that mission is insane. I imagine finishing what you're talking about, an 8, 10, 12-hour day, whatever you're doing, flying those missions, you step out of the aircraft at the end of the day and you're just a noodle.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I bring up, and, I'm going to give a class in South Carolina next month, is I tell the guys, in South Carolina, you may not be like San Diego where you're going to go on a fire for 10 to 12 hours and time out. But what I do remind them of is the fatigue factor. And most of the times on a fire, you've been there all day and you're going to sundown, or, you start at sun up and you go all the way to sundown. When do you think the accident where you're going to run into wires or hit something is going to happen? It's not at the beginning of the day. It's going to be at the end of the day when you're fatigued, you're flying into the sun's coming right in through the canopy, and that's usually when somebody makes a mistake, and you hope it's not a fatal one. So I'm just trying to remind them, this is a very fatiguing job that you're going to be asked to do. And if you're going to go all day on a fire, it's at the end of the day that you really got to be careful and keep your situational awareness about you. That's usually when something's going to go wrong.
Yeah, man, it's hard to argue that point, any of those points. Dave, for you, what's your input on that?
As far as what is the most challenging out of all of those, I'm not a fire pilot, and I have nothing but respect for the folks out there that are doing it. And I've been privileged enough to be with Tony on a lot of classes and watch him teach. I'll be with him on the next one, and it always blows me away, the amount of technique that's going on there, especially like you said, you're basically pulling as much water as you can, so you don't waste any, and then you drop it, you come right back, and you're just heavy all the time. With everything he just described, super intense. But without having really that background myself, I think honestly, the first time I ever tried to long line, I swore it was impossible. And there was some like God-given gifts that, these folks that were training me had that I did not have, like true vertical reference, flying the load. Yeah. So I was like, man, this is ridiculous. This is like impossible. And then after 10 hours or so, I kind of started to figure it out and the light bulb clicked. So that was definitely like challenging. But I will say for me personally, the most challenging mission, it would probably be hoist operations at night on goggles without an autopilot, like John or Mike was saying, and something like the 125, something like the Huey, particularly poor references, anything over open water, even day or night, especially with a boat. But for me, yeah, I mean, if you go out and you try to hoist on goggles and there aren't great references, there are references, but they're not great, and you don't have an autopilot and you legit have to hand fly that, there's so much going on and it's so hard. And we've taught a lot of those folks. I mean, we did that internally in Vegas. And we've taught a lot of MVG hoist classes with SR3. And it's interesting. Like I've seen folks that can hoist, I mean, great during the day, but it's a totally different animal at night. And I've seen a few people that just legitimately struggle and they just can't kind of, pick it up because it's different. It's so different. And you really have to understand how to do that properly with what little you have to look at and not over control. So for me, yeah, probably hoisting at night without the 4-axis autopilot.
I see Mike kind of shaking his head over there. I think he's kind of in agreement, but what's your thought there?
Yeah, same for me too. It's definitely flying an A-Star at night at high altitude with some wind. There's where we do a lot of our business. There's a lot of wind in the afternoon and into the evening. And when you're, in an A-Star, it can get very squirrely and and at night, hopefully you have a good reference, but those ones where this is where the wind is coming from. Well, the victim's on the edge of a kind of a ridge, and my reference point off to the right is a black abyss that my steerable landing light just doesn't find anything down there. And it's kind of like, that's when I tell my crew chief, like, hey, and during our checklist, references, yeah, they're going to suck. So I'm going to do the best I can. And so just know that and try to work it out. But yeah, anything at night in the mountains at high altitude, it's just a whole other animal. And that's why I know with our department, I'll just touch on like maybe pilot requirements. If you're thinking about starting a hoist program, I mean, you should. We don't start even introducing that kind of stuff for daytime until our pilots have about 1,200 hours total in the A-Star. And then we go from there, and it's a very slow progression. And when they're ultimately at almost 2,000 hours, then they're unrestricted daytime, nighttime, any altitude. And because you really do need to have a command of the aircraft, a very good feel and understanding, and especially a lot of reps and a lot of time in the mountains in that, that density altitude up there. And so, yeah, you should have a good starting point of that, of a good amount of experience. Yeah, because mountains are different. Nighttime is different. Hoisting itself too is different. A lot of people some people just can't hold a hover, because it kicks them in the butt, like landing on a dolly. Sometimes that just kicks people in the butt, man. Right. I mean, it's this tiny little aircraft carrier, but it's only a foot off the ground, but it can jack you up. Sometimes it's weird, especially when you're tired.
Well, Dave, you've seen a lot of agencies and a lot of the requirements that precede going into these special mission sets. Based on what you've seen, what's your recommendation as far as, time? And that's a pretty vague question, but what do you think is a good amount of time a pilot should have before kind of transitioning into some of these more difficult mission sets?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I'm with Mike. They wouldn't even let somebody, start around until they had about 1,200 hours. For us, it was 2,000, in the unit, and it was PIC time. And, I think that's important. It's not to say that somebody with 500 hours can't go out and fly, but has more to do with, acquiring just a good feel for the aircraft and flying in crappy winds and, just all of the things. You just build experience the more time you have. And if you're fortunate enough to work somewhere where you're in the mountains and you get to fly up at high altitudes, and power management is a huge thing. I mean, that's going to really, really, change everything for you. It's a game changer. But yeah, I think I would say for me personally, I think there's kind of a line nowhere below about 1,000 hours, or more. It really starts to be, just like I said, it's a thing. They just don't have as good of a feel for the aircraft. And it's not so much the calm days, it's the nasty ones. And people don't get lost, stuck, or hurt as much on good days. They just don't.
Yeah, right.
I joke all the time. I've said this, like, man, there's been fair weather days where we're like, man, I hope we get 10 of them today and nobody calls. And it's blowing 40 at night. And that's when the phone's ringing. You're like, oh, seriously? We got to go
and
now.
most of them wait until dark before they call 911 when they know they've been lost for 6 hours.
Or the weather gets shitty, or it starts raining.
That's
or
Murphy's Law,
gets
right
darker.
there.
Like, why would you want to get rescued when it's still 2:00 in the afternoon and it's beautiful sunshine and 80 degrees? Like, there's no point doing that. Like, the more you fly, the more you see. It's just a statistics thing. Like, it doesn't matter if not every hour is the worst hour of your life. But if you fly 100 and you get one bad one, that means if you fly 1,000 hours, you've had 10 bad ones. Like, it's just a numbers game at that point. And more experience has to equal more experience. Like, it's not all super valuable, but there's a better chance that you'll see something that is a takeaway point. And when you've only got a couple 100 hours, like, you just haven't had enough of an opportunity to see the bad stuff for it to be impactful yet.
We have trained a few folks that were what we would consider very low time. And I will be completely honest, I've been shocked by how capable a few of these folks were with, 400 or 500 hours. And then I've seen a couple folks where I thought, man, I think you got thrown into a situation that you're in over your head and it's not your fault. And, you quite honestly probably shouldn't be here right now. It is what it is. But yeah, I think you really you don't start learning until you've got a lot of time just flying around in crappy conditions,
Some of what you guys do, I like, training at the location is that the customer's at your own facility with the own equipment they're going to use and the own set of weather considerations that exist in that area. And I think of a low time pilot, you go up in a canyon or even at your home airport. As a low time pilot, you haven't had experience dealing with landing in high winds or crosswinds or whatever the thing might be. I can only imagine being a newer pilot with low time, with a training crew on board, and coming back to the airport and like, well, I'm glad you guys are here, but I've not landed in these conditions before. So hold on, and I think that's one of the benefits of having someone like you, Dave, who's a CFI, who's dealt with probably all these different weather conditions. I think it's really important to consider that, it's not only is it safer for the air crew to have someone like yourself on board, especially when you got a low time pilot, but you're also able to impart that knowledge. Any thoughts on that?
Thank you to our sponsor, Shotover. Shotover Systems is the leading developer and manufacturer of high-performance gyro-stabilized cameras with advanced real-time AR mapping and mission management, all backed by unparalleled custom training and support. Now offering the M2 multi-sensor system, sole 6-axis EO/IR platform with 4K Ultra HD color and infrared technology. Ideal for law enforcement and defense. Offered with real-time AR overlays to quickly identify streets, weather, and traffic. Automated license plate recognition, 24 megapixel digital photographs, and automated steering and tracking.
I've actually had that situation where the wind got so bad and there were some storms that popped up where had to jump on there and actually help somebody. And I mean, again, it wasn't even their fault. And the guy after the fact was like, dude, when we checked the weather, it was one of those freak of nature things. Thunderstorms popped up and it literally hit about 50 knots. And the guy was like, I've never even close to experienced this much wind before. And I'm like, hey, this is not your fault. I mean, a lot of people don't, particularly if you're not flying, from kind of, on the West Coast where you've got high mountains and the winds are just whipping all the time. But I'll give you an example. We had a training session recently that where we were in terrain and it was just windy. And it was an initial hoist class and it was just howling, man, for most of the time we were there. And it was in terrain and with a lot of pilots that don't typically get the opportunity to fly in terrain. And that was kind of part of it. was to, get them a little bit of kind of a dip your toe in the water to some hoist training, but in the terrain. And, the first few days it was gusting to like 35. And, we ended up actually having to do a lot of pilot instruction, a lot of just like, hey, how do you fly in the wind? Where should you be? How should you make your approaches? How do you plan a bailout? How do you manage your power? How do you control this thing just to get into the target area to try to complete a hoist? And, interestingly enough, I think you guys said it earlier, Rob had said it when we started, like, if the pilot can't do that, those guys can't even start to teach in the back. The guys on the ground aren't even going to get any reps because the hook's never even going to end up in their hand, so yeah, I mean, at some point you it becomes detrimental, and, we powered through it, but without the ability to show that stuff, it would have been a lot less effective. Like, I don't even know how we would have pulled that class off, because it ended up being like 50% like a mountain flying in the wind class for pilots, just to kind of get the job done.
I think we are guilty, a lot of us, of getting into the weather and be like, well, let's just go see what it's like. Let's go test it out and see. And I can see a training situation like that. Let's just go give it a shot. And you've got no CFI in the front seat, and you get somebody on the hook, or you're in a bad spot. And here you are with low time, or you do have some time, but don't understand the risks that are associated with this situation you're in. And now you're in a bad spot, versus the situation where you've got a CFI who's got the experience, not only flying that, but training that. I think that's hugely important. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts or input on that.
Kind of trailing along with what Dave was saying too about the pilot experience. You can have a guy maybe 400 or 500 hours, and maybe, in a very controlled environment with a CFI in the left seat. There's something mentally about that gives you kind of a peace of mind. And, a guy like that can do great in a training environment. But where the pilot maturity really comes from, and I'll be interested to kind of hear your guys' definition on this. I'm preparing like a kind of a lecture PowerPoint for my team about what the difference between a pilot and an aviator is. And I have my definitions, I have my thoughts, but to me, an aviator who is an experienced professional who's had a lot of time under his belt, especially in the mountains doing the search and rescue operation, will be able to say no a lot more. You might have a younger guy that will want to go and doesn't know what danger or what a hazard is that could be in a very compounding and complex set of events in a rescue where the victims might be located. There could be some compounding factors like high winds, dusk. We get right overhead in the high recon, man, right in the west, and the sun's right in your face. Is that a go, no go? Will a younger guy, a less experienced guy say, you know what, I got to wait for the sun to go down. I can't maintain a safe hover with this sun in my face, or something else like that. Whereas, an aviator can, through experience, take a set of circumstances and predict the likely outcome of those circumstances before it happens, until not, as it's happening and it's too late, but before it happens. A lot of times you could say, hey, I already know how I need to attack this because of X, Y, and Z. And you just know because you've done it so many times. And then that's where the safety and the value comes in, from having all of that experience and training and having that recency, the practice. Like we just recently, we've had to get a new hoist on our 145. And it went down because it turns out looks like the transfer box went out. But our mechanics are telling us, hey guys, you realize you put 10 years worth of hoist cycles on that hoist in 2.5 years. We had over 3,200 hoist cycles on that hoist, and they're kind of, you guys need to, freaking pump the brakes and stop. But I told them, I said, you know what? We had some circumstances where we had to take 6 very green deputies and make them into competent, safe hoist operators. And that took a long time to do it right. And so, you know what you're not talking about right now is any kind of mishap we had because we rushed anything.
Right.
Okay. Right. That's the thing you can't quantify. You can't quantify that /0, 3,200 hoist cycles /0 fatalities. To me, that's the most important component of that statement.
But didn't Tony just talk about this? Like, if you're not planning for those types of costs up front, don't get into the business in the first place. Like that is the cost of doing business. And that's to Tony's point right there. It's like, absolutely. that is part of the cost of doing business. And to you, Mike, like, hell no, go do more.
Yeah. And that's what we'd say. We're like, hey, we got to do what we got to do. You guys got to do what you got to do. Search and rescue, especially at night, that's what, you look at these agencies like these fire departments and why they require such high mountain time, high NVG time. Like Tony was saying, fighting fire from a helicopter is a very, very dangerous operation. And it's not so much how much ink the guy has in his logbook, but what comes with that is if a guy has 4,000 or 5,000 hours in the utility world or whatnot, that took a long time. So what comes at that 5,000th hour is a guy that's much older, maybe in his 40s, he's more mature. And so it's not just so much of that flight time, but they're looking for, guys that, okay, you've been flying about 15 years. Okay, if you've been flying 15 years in utility and you haven't had a mishap, you haven't had an incident, you haven't had anything, you're search and rescue. Yeah, that speaks a lot. Like, okay, this is a very thoughtful, methodical thinker, a professional aviator, not just a pilot that can go out there and wiggle the sticks and get lucky. Yeah, but it's that mentality too. It's that mindset of being a professional aviator and knowing all the circumstances and through experience to keep people safe. Because, like I've heard it said before, we do what we do the way we do so that we can do it again tomorrow. And that starts with a safety mindset and a very mature, healthy appreciation of how bad and how wrong this operation can go, instead of just going into it blindly, cavalierly sometimes, and that you could, not always, but with a less experienced pilot, that saying no or not knowing what you don't know is much more prevalent.
Yep. Tony, you started to say something earlier. I want to go back to you.
Yeah. So for our guys, we were throwing out hours. Hey, when are you ready to really do mission specific stuff? So, for our patrol pilots to come over to the fire rescue side, your minimum is 2,000 hours. And the reason we set it at 2,000 hours is you're going from a Bell 407 to a Bell 205. So I like to say you're going from a sports car to a bus. It feels different. Your seat of your pants feel is going to be different as soon as you climb into that thing. You're used to the rotor mast being right behind your seat. Now it's 6 feet behind your seat. There's so many differences involved in moving up to the Bell 205, and then we're asking you to do a completely different mission from what you were taught to do in the law enforcement side. So when I get a new pilot in, first thing of all, I'll tell him, let's be clear on something. Know when to say no. You are going to be asked to do some very crazy stuff. You're going to be asked to do some rescues that maybe you shouldn't do. You're going to be asked to do some water drops in an area that you 100% should not be going into. Know when to say no. And so we'll go out and, it's the crawl, walk, run thing. Get a feel of the aircraft. And to be quite honest, what I hope for with a new pilot is that we do have a Santa Ana condition, because one of the most uncomfortable things that they're going to do in firefighting is go to a fire in anywhere from 30 to 45 knot winds. And if you haven't flown low level in those type of winds, it is very uncomfortable. The aircraft can do it, but can you do it? So we'll get them out there in those winds on purpose when most people won't go out there, and we'll show them how to get the helicopter on the ground. Honestly, in 40 knot winds, we show them how ineffective their water drops are. You're not hitting anything. So there comes a point to where in this training, you just got to tell them, hey, I'm being very inefficient. I can't hit the flames. The winds are too high. You go do something else. You got to know when to say no.
I kind of giggled because I think about how much I hate Santa Anas, how turbulent they are and how uncomfortable it is. So I remember getting requests and like, don't they know it's Santa Anas? I don't want to go do that. It's really an uncomfortable thing. That turbulence is crazy. And I think about, our professions evolved where I think in the early days we considered like the pilot was the thing. Like that's all that mattered was the pilot. Now we realize the mission's more important than the pilot. So how do we do the mission best? Well, how we do that is putting that person, whoever's doing the job, whether it's a TFO, a rescue specialist, whatever the thing is, into a position to do the thing that they need to do. So, we talk about these, given the pilot, the skill sets they need to do these things. I'm interested, Rob, from your perspective, to kind of hear from you on how that, I think of being in your shoes, you go into a canyon with an experienced pilot, your mind probably isn't on the mission itself. You're probably just trying to figure out how to survive with this pilot who has no business being in this canyon. So can you talk about some of the perspectives you have, the differences between, being with a confident pilot who's got proper training and not?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's only, I think fairly recently that the emphasis has been put more on making it a more level playing field in terms of the training that's delivered on a class like any of these special missions classes that any of these training companies are providing. Is that I think until fairly recently, the pilot position has been neglected, and humbly, I think we've sort of started to change that mindset a little bit and bring the focus more evenly onto the pilot as well as the other roles within that team. But the way that we train it, and the way we talk about it a lot is that, like we've talked about a bunch on this show so far, is that if the pilot can't give the guys in the back what they need to have a chance to, I'm not even saying to do the job well, to even have a chance to do the job well, then things are going to get really, really difficult, right? So for me in the back, my job is to train the guys in the back to have a chance to do their job. And there are days that we go out there with a pilot and fingers crossed, I've got a guy like Dave or Mike or Tony sitting in the front with me, or no doubt you, John, if I have a chance to fly with you one day. But when I know that I have someone sitting in the front left seat or the front right, depending on the aircraft, that's there to support that student in the front, my level of comfort and my confidence level to, I won't say push it, but to take advantage of that training opportunity is much, much higher. Whereas if I'm not totally sure that the pilot in the front is going to be able to deliver, what I need them to deliver, then immediately in the back, I'm going to lower my expectations and I'm going to say, all right, like today's not the day. If I don't have a pilot in the front, and there are very rare cases where we go out and we don't have that capability, to have that pilot instruction hands-on in the front. And I'll be very, very clear. I'm not a pilot, but I do have a fairly reasonable, humbly, I would say, understanding of what works and what doesn't from a pilot perspective. I know if the approach is too fast. I know if the approach is too slow. I know if we're climbing or descending. I get a pretty good feel for what's happening. It doesn't matter if it's long lining or hoisting or whatever. I have a pretty good idea of what works and what doesn't, but I have no ability to fix the problem from the back. I can say, you're too fast, or you're too slow, or you're drifting left, or you're drifting back, but I can't actually fix it. And the disconnect there is that if I know that I have someone in the front that, as my brain is thinking, we're drifting back here, that I know without even saying it, without even having to think it, that the person in the front is thinking exactly the same thing I'm thinking and is pushing forward on the cyclic and fixing the problem, I don't have to think about that anymore. I can take that whole concern bubble, put it to the side, and I can focus entirely 100% on training my hoist operator in the back, knowing that we're operating in this like safe bubble. And we're like, it's a weird feeling, to be honest, to be able to, and Mike's seen it firsthand in the last few weeks, but we went out to Riverside and put those guys in a place that most people would not appreciate being put into, but we were able to put these guys in those positions very comfortably, partly because we had, or largely because we had someone in the front who could fix the problems when they start to go sideways. Now, there's more to it, I think, than just hoisting. Hoist goes in, hoist goes out. That's one thing, loads go into the trees, loads come out, but there is a huge part of what we do in the back that relies on the guy in the front. I trust the guy in the front to not put me in a bad spot. And, you need to know from a pilot perspective. And quite frankly, if I've shown up to an agency and I've never flown with any of those pilots, I walk into that room with zero trust. I have trust issues. I walk in with zero trust, and you need to prove to me that you have the capability to do the job. And I don't think that's unreasonable, because I've flown with hundreds of people over the last years, and I wouldn't be here today talking to you if I didn't have some, you need to have a presence of mind to be like, every person out there is out to kill me until they prove otherwise, and then you work up from there, right? But if you don't understand the limitations of your aircraft, or you don't totally have a grasp on what is and is not safe, I'm going to assume you maybe don't totally have an understanding of that. And that's where it's phenomenal to have guys like I'm sharing a computer screen with here today, to be able to be in that room and, and to keep those people on track. And maybe Dave can speak to some more of that. But for me, I after having done it the way that I'm doing it now, with pilots in the front who know what they're doing, I can't imagine going away from that. It's just a total game changer for me to be able to try and focus on what I'm doing, to know that we're going to be safe, to know that we're not going to put the aircraft in a bad spot or our people in a bad spot. I think, Dave can probably touch on that more, because like I said, I'm not a pilot. But
before you touch on that, let me just bring something up, and I'll go back to you, Dave. We've talked a lot about costs associated with this type of training throughout this podcast. That's, I think, the one obstacle that people face in all these environments, whether it's the purchase of the aircraft, the equipment that goes in the aircraft, the mission equipment, and then now the training side of the house. So I think what we know is there's a defined cost that goes with the training and all this stuff that goes with what we're talking about, but in particular, the training with this specific conversation. What we don't know is the cost of a mishap that involves people that are on the end of the hook, or whatever position that air crew's in, whatever mission they're doing. There's an unknown cost associated with a mishap involving that. So Dave, can you kind of touch on that concept a little bit, and then to what Rob said?
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
Yeah, I mean, if you do this long enough, I think, particularly in police, fire, or military, it's inevitable. Just the nature of the business. You're going to have, you'll be around somebody, or personally, you're gonna be involved. Somebody's gonna get hurt, or God forbid, killed. It happens. You can be doing everything right, and it can quite honestly still happen. And, from my own personal experience, it sucks. You can't put a price tag on that. You honestly can't. You can't put a price tag on somebody's life, whether it's a citizen, one of your own people, and you can't put a price tag on what everybody goes through after something like that happens. I mean, it's just that's a scar that runs deeper than anything you'll ever be able to explain to somebody. It just sucks. But, to Rob's point, I think what he's talking about makes the training to where, he doesn't have to, or nobody else has to focus on worrying about stuff like that, short of something breaking, or, a catastrophic aircraft failure or something like that. But if the folks in the back know, if Rob knows, hey, we cannot drift left, when we do whatever we're doing, and we start to go a little bit, immediately, someone's up there to be like, usually, like, you're going to hear it immediately from me. I just start fixing it. And I try not to talk any more than I have to, but I'm like, hey, that's just me. I tell them, that's me helping you. That's just me. And they're like, okay, because, you get loaded up. These are stressful situations. And quite honestly, when do you grow? You grow when you're uncomfortable. You grow when you're making mistakes. So to allow have somebody in that environment where they can be kind of stressed to the max, and not go beyond it to where learning is not happening anymore. But, we need to kind of get people uncomfortable in these types of situations. You know, everybody's been talking about how uncomfortable these things can be, dropping water on a fire, hoisting in the mountains, you know, flying at night, fast rope, and all these things. It can be very uncomfortable flying. So the pilots need to be kind of put outside their comfort zone. And you know, when you get stressed, sometimes things start to just not, you know, go as planned. So, you know, for us, especially to be there and not be stressed out, you know, it's situations that, like for me personally, that I'm comfortable in. I've been in them a long time. I know Mike has, Tony has. And I always joke, Rob's heard me say this a million times, like I'm the person doing the least amount of work up there, you know, like I'm just kind of watching, monitoring, like, and I'm ready to fix something. And if we start doing anything that I don't like, then I just fix it, you know, and then it keeps it so much safer. And then by default, Rob or whoever, you know, the instructor is able to then turn around and not have to be concerned about that. And then the level of instruction's better because we know that we can start to get into pretty technical stuff, because we don't have to worry about those things, you know, potentially becoming unsafe. So yeah, it's huge value in it.
Like fundamentally, like anyone in the back, myself included, or any one of our instructors or anyone else out there, like if you're with an agency and the guys in the back, your hoist instructor in the back is providing, you know, pilot feedback, then it's one thing to say, hey, you know, you're pretty consistently, you know, drifting back, or we had a pretty good climb on like the whole way through that. That's fine, you know, provide that feedback because you have that perspective. But, you know, I can't reach up and poke the cyclic. I can't physically fix the problem. And that's the disconnect. Like no quality of instruction, no instructor on earth can telepathically move the cyclic. And you know, if they're not happy in the back, myself included, or any one of our guys, if you're not happy in the back, if something needs to change, you know, no amount of coaching, no amount of words, no amount of anything can fix that. The only way you can fix it is by having someone in the front who is as in tune as I am with what's going on and knows almost before it does that it's going sideways and can fix it. Because like Dave said, like you can't take the aircraft and the crew and put them into these kinds of precarious positions if the guys aren't, if we're not all on the same page, and if there isn't that level of support to get them out of trouble. Because we want to take them out to that 9.5, 9.9 out of 10 comfort level. We want to take them right out to that outer limit because that's where the growth happens, like Dave said. But the reality is the consequences of progressing to 10.1 are like, you hurt your buddy. You know, I need to be damn sure that I got a pretty good fail-safe in there before we push it anywhere near that 9.9. If I don't have Dave in the front, we're backing it out to an 8, a 7, a 6. Like we're coming way back to somewhere that I feel like I can fix the problem from the back if we have to, you know, and that's not where I want to be. I want to be at that 8, 9, 10. I don't want to be at 6, you know, and that's the difference.
More importantly, like you said, okay, well, if we keep backing up, you know, you can tell someone, hey, you keep backing up, but the better fix to that is to be able to say, hey, this is why you keep backing up. You need to change your reference point. You need to look more, you know, laterally instead of forward. Like there's a lot of things that you can actually give somebody some advice. Like, hey, I've been here. I know exactly what you're dealing with. Like, here's a fix, you know, here's a little cheat code, you know, that'll maybe help you with what's going on. Tony, do you have something?
Yeah. So, and I'll bounce this off of both Mike and Dave. You know, the CFIs up front, you're trying to do your best to give the pilot that's new at whatever mission specific training you're trying to give them. It could be hoist, it could be firefighting, it could be fast rope. I've run into this a few times, and when I see it, I redirect them, give them a break, do a go around, or show them another way. When you're trying to get them to the 9 out of 9 and you look over and they're doing the plastic man or they're having a helmet fire, you really got to back off a little bit, show them another way, redirect, do whatever you have to do. But at that point, the learning has stopped, because if he's trying to squeeze the plastic, you know, through the cyclic, or there's smoke coming out the side of his helmet, you definitely got to redirect. Would you guys agree with that?
Oh yeah,
totally. And with that being said, Tony, too, like we laugh about it, right? But again, not a pilot, but certainly know, and you guys can all correct me if I'm wrong here, when things start to get stressful and you guys in the front start working pretty damn hard, what happens first? Your feet start to lock out. You get the rigid feet, right? And I can't tell that from the back. If that's the first thing that goes, there's no way for me to know in the back that that's starting to happen. But if you guys are following along on the controls and you've got your feet light to the rest of the pedals and you're starting to feel that things aren't going right, you guys are in a better position than I am. You guys can have the brain space to look across and see the sweat beating down the face. Like, you guys get better cues than I do about where things are at and what that over controlling looks like or what the reference points look like. I don't have that ability in the front to I mean, if I'm taking that information on, my focus is not where it should be, and I'm trying to divide my attention 2 or 3 different ways, and that limits my ability to do my job. We're just sharing the load, which is good to see.
Yep. I think the purpose and mindset in creating this podcast is a lot in line with Dave, how you created SR3, the mindset behind it. And I'll kind of put you on the spot here to talk about here in a second about Dave Van Buskirk and that whole situation that created SR3. But before we do that, a lot of the reasons what we're talking about is to be more efficient and effective in the mission sets that we're doing. But at the end of the day, a safer operation is the most important part of what we want to do. At the end of the day, we all want our entire crew to come home with all their fingers and toes and intact, healthy, and happy to go home to see their family. That's what we really want to do. So a lot of agencies like you said, Dave, we've been doing what we've been doing forever. We haven't had an accident. We're fine. We're good. But like your company motto is, you don't know what you don't know. So can you talk about SR3, the founding of that, and the story behind that as an illustration of why this is important?
Yeah, I mean, I'll certainly, I'll give you the short version of it. Just, we've told this story several times, and I mean, it's always worth repeating. But essentially, in a nutshell, we had a fatal accident in 2013. Lost probably the best rescuer that our agency had ever had, Dave Van Buskirk. Good. I mean, one of the best friends I've ever had. The guy was just a phenomenal human being, and he was so good at what he did. And the accident essentially kind of started years before, because we just kind of started looking outside, started looking for better ways to do things, or stopped looking for better ways to do things, and hadn't really had anybody come in several years to look at the operation. And quite honestly, we had fallen behind, equipment wise, procedure wise. There was a lot of things that we could have been doing better and that we weren't. Some of the folks that had been there for a long time didn't feel the need, to bring anybody else in. And unfortunately that contributed, I personally believe, to the accident. And it was, really as a result of having a non-locking hoist hook that we should have replaced years prior. So, essentially on a night hoist rescue, Dave Van Buskirk had been inserted, stayed on the hook, put a strap on a guy that was stuck up on a ledge. And quite honestly, we shouldn't have been using the strap either. And it's on a mountain rescue device. Should have been using something different. But at the time, that was what we'd been using for years. And at the end of the day, made the pick. The victim stayed on the hook, and Dave rolled out and disconnected from the hoist hook and fell to his death. So, it was one of those things that it really hurt. More so because it was preventable. It was something that just a simple, better piece of equipment would have prevented that from happening, or at least greatly reduced the possibility of it happening. So, if you're flying and you have a flame out or something breaks, I mean, it is what it is. But, when something like that happens, it's like, man, that shouldn't have happened, So essentially, that's what kind of started SR3. Dave's call sign was SR3. So that was kind of the way that we had honored him. And it all kind of started on just creating awareness on the accident and the incident. And then it just grew from there. So, long story short, I'd like to think that, we're definitely honoring him and what he stood for. And everything that we do kind of has his name attached to it. And that's not lost on us. So, the goal has always been to try to create the most, the best training for anybody out there. And, it is not about the money. It is about the training. But at the end of the day, I mean, whether you get it from SR3 or you get it from any of the other organizations out there, or you just reach out to another similarly situated agency, like, Tony was a great source of information for us in Vegas, because again, we were very similarly situated with the types of rescues and the gear that we were flying. Even if you just reach out to somebody else just to find out what are they doing and how are they handling situations, what does their SMS program look like, all of those types of things. You don't even have to necessarily spend money, but I can't stress how important that is to never stop learning, to never stop growing, to never, you should have kind of a I'm never satisfied attitude with your organization and your safety and your operation, because you owe it to your people and you owe it to the people that you serve. So yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, I don't want to turn this into an SR3 advertisement by any means, because again, we're not the only option out there, and the other options out there provide phenomenal training. They all do, but the point is, just don't get kind of stuck, in the comfort zone, I guess, because if you stay there long enough, eventually it can bite you, and if it does bite you, it just sucks.
Yeah, sorry to go down that path, but it is, I think, honoring to Van Buskirk to talk about the story and to honor the contributions he made to the profession, and so I encourage anybody who's listening, if you're in a position, even if you're not in a position, to ask for this training, to look for ways to get approvals, look at your mission sets and think about, where can I go to make these mission sets more safe, more effective, more efficient. Reach out to someone like Dave at SR3 or Mike at RSO. I know Mike's got an open door policy. We're all looking to help each other out. Reach out to us at the Hangar Z and we'll point you in the right direction. Reach out to Tony. Tony knows everybody in the world. That's what 50 years of law enforcement experience does.
Whoa, hey, whoa.
But it's really important. There's a lot of different mission sets that we're all doing out there, and we didn't even scratch the surface on a lot of the stuff we want to talk about. But it is really important at the end of the day for everyone to go home happy and healthy, and that's what we all want. But I think the best way to make sure that happens is to rely on the expertise and knowledge that we've all gained in this industry over the course of time, and not rely on, well, we've gotten away with it this long, let's see if we can continue to do that. So on that, I just want to open it up before we close out to you guys. Any closing thoughts? And Tony, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Rob, and then Mike, and then Dave.
Yeah, I'll go back to what I tell everybody. I take a lot of phone calls from different agencies that are, like I said, just starting out. They want to start out, in firefighting, or they want to start out, hey, we just got a medium with a hoist, and we don't have that skill set. The advice is still the same. First of all, before you even go looking for training, make sure your department is supporting you being in the hoist world, firefighting, whatever they're asking you to do that's new. Make sure they're going to support you 100%, and that means budget-wise. If you are already starting off behind the power curve and they're not going to throw any money at you, and it's going to be a struggle from day one, don't do it. If you're on the flip side, kind of like San Diego Sheriff, where we are supported with a healthy budget and training is not an issue, go get that outside training. One of the things I'll add is, even if you've been doing it for 20 years, 30 years, at some point you should have either an audit done or an outside vendor come in and do some training with you, just to see that you are still up to industry standard, making sure you're still using the best equipment out there and you're using all the techniques. Things have advanced, they always keep advancing, and just never stop learning, and don't be afraid to bring somebody else in to see what you're doing.
Yeah. The never stop learning mentality I love. And I think that's what's so engaging about this industry, is you've never mastered it all. There's always something new to learn, and I think for me, has always been a captivating part of this industry. Rob, for you, what's your kind of closing thoughts? Thank you to our sponsor, BLR Aerospace. BLR Aerospace's revolutionary fast fin system improves performance and enhances safety across various helicopter platforms. This cutting-edge aftermarket solution improves tail rotor effectiveness, stability, and payload capacity while reducing fuel consumption and pilot fatigue. Trusted globally, FastFin delivers unmatched control, efficiency, and reliabilities for diverse helicopter operations. Learn more at blraerospace.com.
Yeah, and I mean it really is. I think for me, just a bit of I call it a call to action or whatever you want to call it. But piggybacking off Tony's thoughts, there is a lot of information out there. I think part of the reason why we put this together today is to try and help agencies that it doesn't matter to me whether you are brand new trying to get into it, like Tony said, whether you're doing it, whether you're looking at a new aircraft platform, whether you're looking at more of the same aircraft, I don't care. If you are looking to expand your capabilities in any way, shape, or form, and again, from the top of the hierarchy down, if you're listening to this and you work for Bell or you work for Airbus and you're in the training, the marketing, the sales department, thank you for listening to this much of this podcast for a start, familiarizing yourself with what's out there. If you're listening to this and you think that one of those people I just mentioned should hear this, please send it to them, because what I think we've talked about for the last better part of 2 hours here, that can change a unit. And I don't care whether that training, like Dave said, comes from SR3 or anyone else, but I think you owe it to your unit, like Tony said, to do it properly. And if you can't, if you don't have the capability to do it properly, then, that's a whole other conversation. But if you're in the business and you're looking to do this properly, being trained and educated correctly, I think is so important. And that, like I said, that starts at Airbus. I'll name them: Airbus, Bell, Sikorsky, MD. Like that starts from the absolute top of the line down. And, if they miss the boat and don't have the opportunity to recommend special mission training to their clients, then let's go down the line. When it comes to the completions guys like Metro, like Davenport, like Hangar One, like all these folks that are out there doing these completions, that's a great opportunity to recommend to your clients, hey, have you considered some training? If you want a Bambi bucket, if you want a cargo hook, do you know how to long line? There's an opportunity there to capture the audience and make sure they're fully aware of what's out there and what's available to them. And then all the way down the line to the end user. If you are a pilot working for a police agency right now and you're thinking, geez, a lot of what they've just said sounds pretty good to me, then, please pass that information along to your managers and sort of up the chain and educate yourself and then educate them on what's out there. And yeah, it doesn't matter to me who you reach out to. We would love to have a conversation with you and point you in the right direction. And we've said this before, we'll say it again. If you get a hold of us or me or Dave and ask for training and it's not for us, if it's not in our skill set, if it's not in our capability, we'll send you on to someone who it is. There are some people out there, John, you mentioned Nick Mintz from Tactical Flying. Like if you want TFO training, my recommendation is probably give Nick Mintz a call. There are other folks out there that do exceptionally good work in their specialist fields. And, but you owe it to your agency and your peers and the people that you're out there trying to help to make sure that you're as well educated and as skilled as you possibly can be. And the hope is, I guess, that what we've put out there, and this is long-winded, I know, but the hope that what we've put out there is steering people in the right direction, I think is really important, and educating them, because I do really think that a lot of folks just simply aren't aware. We've heard it from all the way at the very, very top of the chain. We've talked to OEMs at the Airbus Bell level that we've approached them and they've said to us point blank, we've never heard of anyone out there that does anything like what you guys do. We had no idea that stuff like this existed. And that to me blows my mind. So that's part of the impetus for starting something like this is an educational standpoint, right? So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to put that out there. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. We've talked a lot about, the part of what we're trying to do on the podcast is to encourage folks not to reinvent the wheel, because it's probably already been invented. And this is a part of that, right? Like, don't try and figure this out on your own. There's people who've come across best practice, not on their own doing. You guys have visited hundreds of agencies and taken the best parts of what you've found at these different agencies and can pass that along. And that's crucial to me,
Yeah, we don't think we're particularly special. We just I'm sure you guys could collectively agree. Like, I just feel very, very lucky to have had the opportunity to go and visit so many different agencies and cherry pick all the very best things from all those different agencies. And, you know, anybody listening to this who was given the same opportunity would have done just as well. You know, they would all have done the same job. We are just very fortunate to have been the lucky ones to have been given that opportunity. And I've said it 100 times in a million podcasts. Like, I feel obligated to pass that information along because I am the lucky one in this case that's had that opportunity. And that's now my job to pass that along. And, you know, Dave spoke to it. DVB would have wanted it. You know, anyone who is in the business who actually cares about doing the job to the best of you and your agency's ability would say the same thing. So yeah, we think that that's really important.
Yeah. Mike, any closing thoughts on your side?
Yeah, first I just want to say it was great. It was an honor to share the screen with you guys. Some really good friends here, and it's good to see you again. I would say too, one of the things that the benefits I would say that we had from bringing in someone like SR3 is sometimes, you know, you can't be a prophet in your own village, and you maybe want to do a procedure, you want to do something, you want to buy a piece of gear. And sometimes all it takes is just hearing it from somebody else outside the unit. And then it's like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. Why aren't we doing that? And I'm like, what have I been trying to say? You know what I mean? And so we had some moments like that, and it was great. So, and I would say just, you know, it's one of the things that keeps an operation safe is humility and checking an ego. You cannot have ego in this operation, whatever it is we're doing that we're talking about here, these types of operations. So, you know, have the humility and offer, you know, see about having someone come in and audit your program. You can only benefit from it, and you'll learn some things. You may change some things, and it may save a life. You know, it's for sure. So there's a tremendous amount of value in seeking better tactics, techniques, and so forth. And it's just, I think it's just it's a healthy sign of a mature, well-functioned organization to seek that kind of, or just do it your internal self, you know, open those safety meetings. Like, or can we do anything different? Can we do anything better than what we're doing now? We constantly have to rely on that. And because like Dave said, just because you haven't had an accident doesn't mean you're not operating safely.
Yep.
So, yeah, other than that, yeah, thanks guys. It was great to see you again. And
I think that what you said, Dave, is well put. You know, I won't rephrase it in the way you did, so I'll let you rephrase it, but I love that idea, you know, because I think that is the idea, or the understanding is, well, nothing's happened, so we're good. Like, maybe not, you know? So Dave, closing thoughts on your side?
Yeah, I mean, I think these guys all covered it, but you know, as you said with that, nothing breeds arrogance like success, right? Like, you know, you can, if you're just batting 1,000 all the time, you start to get comfortable. And I think the best advice I can give anybody out there, that whether they're a manager or a supervisor or they're an operator, you know, no matter what your level is, you just can't get comfortable. You always have to, you know, be trying to look for a better way to do things. And, you know, again, whether you bring somebody in to look at your operation every so often, or you just reach out to somebody, like, you know, I'd said earlier, if you just reach out to another organization, you know, places like Mike, Tony, other police, fire, even the military, I mean, they're great sources of information. It won't cost you anything, you know? So I would just say that just never be satisfied, you know, don't let your guard down. And for me personally, one thing that I always tell people, this is something a little bit in a different direction, but if you have a lot of experience within your organization and you've been there a long time, share it. Don't be one of those folks that retires and held on to that because, you know, you didn't want to make anybody else better than you, you know. But I saw that off and on, you know, where I worked from some folks, and I saw people that like literally their goal was always to make anybody that they could better than they were. So, you know, I would suggest be the second person. If anything that you've ever learned in your time just pour it into everybody around you, because you'd be shocked at how much better and safer that will make your organization. And that could literally save somebody's life someday. I mean, if you just literally are willing to share everything that you'd ever learned, it's selfish not to. So it's always been my view. And I know everybody sitting here right now in this discussion is cut from that same cloth. So yeah, that's something that's always near and dear to me is, don't take it with you, man. Just pour it into the folks around you.
Yeah. The leadership philosophy of checking your ego at the door, leaving it better than you found it, and making the people around you better than you ever were is the three best things that I think could ever be said as a leader that you're, as far as goals go. Rob, I saw you kind of engage. You have one more point you want to bring up?
Yeah, if I could, I won't say a shameless plug, but certainly something for people to consider is it's now the end of November. Coming around in March every year is our favorite time of year. It's like Hoist Operator Christmas and Rescue Christmas, Heli Expo. So if you are interested and you're listening to this and you want to get a little taste of what options are available out there, and again, this is not an SR3 specific thing. If you want to talk to anyone who's anyone in this industry, including every single person on this panel right now and many, many, many more, Dallas. Go to Dallas. There is a Goodrich, or now owned by Signia, but Goodrich puts on a hoist rescue conference. It'll be March 8 and 9 this year, the Saturday, Sunday, followed immediately by the AXA, the Public Safety Association, the Airborne Public Safety Association Rescue Summit will happen on the Monday, followed immediately by 3 days of whatever Heli Expo is called now, VAI, Verticon. It's changed this year. But there is basically a good week of not free, but certainly very, very affordable education, networking, access to a bunch of people doing the work. And if you come and you find any of us and many, many more at any point during that week and want to pick our brains and get some information, that is just such a phenomenal opportunity to that. The Hoist Operator Conference is free. You can sign up right now for 2 days of phenomenal training. We're presenting and we'll probably, or as always, filling space in the back, but we'll try our best. But there is some phenomenal presenters there. And if you want to go and get 2 days of just outrageously educational content for absolutely nothing, it would be such a good place to go. So shameless plug. I love that conference. It's like one of my favorite weekends of the year. All these guys would agree. And if anyone's listening who wants a little taste of that type of stuff and wants to get more information, that's a really good place to go to talk to a lot of folks that are doing the work.
Yeah, I agree. I got to go last year for the first time, and having not been in a position where we had those mission sets, I wasn't sure what my takeaway was going to be, but man, there was a ton. There are a lot of carryover. So even if you're not currently flying for an agency that has that mission set, I encourage you to go and learn from these folks, because there's a lot of takeaways. Onboard systems, I believe, is the new. It's going to be onboard hoist and winch, and they do a phenomenal job with not only their product but the conferences they put on every year. So look forward to seeing you all there. So with that, any closing thoughts by anybody before we say goodbye?
Just one more thing regarding Heli Expo. If you can take the time to, again, it's not free, but it is worth showing up to Heli Expo, the Hoist Users Conference, the Rescue Summit. The networking and the people that you will meet at that conference is gold. And I mean, you will meet people that will bend over backwards to help you. And, I'll just give you one example. All of us on this panel has met a guy named Derek from Dublin. And that guy, you meet people like him that he'll tell you some stories. He's given a few of the training classes during, the expo and during the conference, and the things you will learn and lessons learned from people like him are invaluable.
Speaking of Derek from Dublin, we'll have to bring him on the podcast here pretty soon.
You have to, but you're going to need a translator, but I'm just throwing that out there now.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you guys for your time and for imparting your knowledge on the industry and what you guys are all doing at SR3 and at your respective agencies. It's amazing work. So until next time, We'll catch you later.
Thank you, John.
Cheers. All right,
bye.
boys. Good job.
See you guys.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers. Thank you to our sponsor, BLR Aerospace. BLR Aerospace's revolutionary fast fin system improves performance and enhances safety across various helicopter platforms. This cutting-edge aftermarket solution improves tail rotor effectiveness, stability, and payload capacity while reducing fuel consumption and pilot fatigue. Trusted globally, FastFin delivers unmatched control, efficiency, and reliabilities for diverse helicopter operations. Learn more at blraerospace.com.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support. Thank you to our sponsor, Shotover. Shotover Systems is the leading developer and manufacturer of high-performance gyro-stabilized cameras with advanced real-time AR mapping and mission management, all backed by unparalleled custom training and support. Now offering the M2 multi-sensor system, sole 6-axis EO/IR platform with 4K Ultra HD color and infrared technology. Ideal for law enforcement and defense. Offered with real-time AR overlays to quickly identify streets, weather, and traffic. Automated license plate recognition, 24 megapixel digital photographs, and automated steering and tracking.
Thank you for joining us for this insightful 2-part series on the urgent need for mission-specific training in public safety aviation. We love the conversation we had with Hangar Z alumni guests Dave Callen, Rob Munday, and Mike Calhoun. We hope this discussion has shed light on the need for mission-specific training to hone in the specialized skills required for the mission sets in public safety aviation. We hope it's inspired you to embrace continuous learning and collaboration within your own agencies. The complexity of aerial operations demands not only advanced skills, but also sound decision-making and preparation that comes through advanced training with experts like the SR3 crew. If you found this episode valuable, we encourage you to share it with your colleagues and peers. Together, we can drive the conversation forward and enhance the safety and efficiency of public safety aviation. If you enjoy the Hangar Z podcast and want to support our mission, we invite you to like, subscribe, and write a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also plays a crucial role in promoting the missions in public safety aviation. By subscribing, you'll ensure you never miss an episode filled with valuable insights and discussions. Your likes and reviews help us to reach more listeners, spreading awareness about the critical issues and advancements in our field. Together, we can make a difference and elevate the conversation around public safety aviation. Thank you for your support. Cheers.